Welcome in to It's Just the Show. I'm your host, Jay Stone. And with me, as always, is Corey Champney.
Hey.
And we're here on episode 8 to talk about the SEC's dominance over the last decade, really over the last 17 years. Corey and I were just running through some stats, talking about the last 17 years college football champions from 2006 to 2023. That's 18 years. There have been 13 SEC teams win it all. So if we just do the 17 years from 2006, the 17 seasons from 2006 to 2022, it is as follows. From 2006, you have the University of Florida. I believe that would be Tim Tebow.
Yep.
2007, LSU. 2008, Florida. 09, Bama. 10, Cam Newton and Auburn. 11, Bama. 12, Bama. Then in 13, we finally get an ACC team in Florida State with Jameis Winston. 2014, another non-SEC team in Ohio State. 2015, Bama's back on top. 2016, here comes Clemson. 2017, Bama again. 2018, Clemson again. And then from 2019 on, it was all SEC, baby, until this recent years, Michigan took the top spot. So 2019, LSU. 2020, Bama. And then the back-to-back University of Georgia national champion Bulldogs, 21 and 22, led by Stetson Bennett IV. My man, if you would come to Northeast Georgia here in Cornelia sometime in your off time and hang out with us, we'd love that.
Oh, man.
We've got some mutual friends. I'm trying to get us connected, man. Come see us. So the SEC has been dominant for almost 2 decades, really. Come 2026, I would not be surprised if a SEC team won the national championship again this year with the expansion of the 12-team playoff. You know, we could have multiple SEC teams in a 12-game playoff.
Yeah.
Texas is going to be incredible. Georgia's going to be incredible, coming out number 1 to start the season. Bama's going to be really a good team. Their biggest questions at wide receiver. So
yeah, I think this is going to be the weakest Alabama team in probably the last 15 years.
And that's the weakest team could still win a national championship.
Exactly. My prediction is there's going to be 6 SEC teams.
It's
Georgia, Oklahoma, Texas. I think that Alabama will make it. Ole Miss is going to surprise people. I like Jackson Dart. I think he's a great quarterback for them. And I think Tennessee.
Yeah. I could see it happening. And
maybe 4, probably 4, but 6 is a possibility.
I don't see LSU having a big season this year. I think Mississippi State's going to continue to be average again. Vanderbilt is going to be subpar. Kentucky is going to be subpar. No offense to Bob up there. I just don't think he has the talent in Kentucky. He talked about it last season, and he said something similar to what Kirby said back in 2016. You want to see some championships, you're going to have to empty your pockets.
Yep.
Show these kids the money. If Kentucky fans want a natty, they're going to have to start paying the kids. It's open season.
And it's hard to sell a place like Kentucky. It's like, you want to go play in Kentucky, or do you want to go play in Florida?
Yep.
Or do you want to go play in Louisiana? Or do you want to go play in Georgia? Like, what do they got? What do they have in Kentucky? They have the Arc.
Go Big Blue. I mean, I've got nothing.
Basketball maybe?
Yeah, if that.
Oh, no, don't get me started on Kentucky basketball.
Yeah, okay, so a little backstory on that. We did our bracket busters this year for the NCAA men's basketball tournament, and Corey picked Kentucky to win it all, and I picked Long Beach State to upset them, and I was right, and he was wrong, and it was terrible.
It was a mistake. I tried to go. You try to run with the horse that's won a lot, right? You pick a contender,
Mm-hmm.
and boy, I saddled up on the wrong horse.
Yeah, Calipari was not happy. Neither was Corey.
Calipari, come on, seriously,
And then, this Long Beach State out of Michigan comes out of nowhere with the 5th year, 7th year senior, whatever crazy year he was in school, You got a grown-ass man out there just bombing threes over the top of his head, super unorthodox jump shot, and just sinking them. Nobody was ready for that.
And what's my punishment for Kentucky losing?
I do believe we have to go out in public while you're wearing a Yankees hat. I'm not sorry, buddy.
You know, that's what happens when you make a bet. And there's no money. I wish money was involved and not a Yankees hat. Me and my big New England Boston mouth gets me in trouble. Oh, there's one thing that I told myself I would never ever wear in my entire life, and that would be a Yankees hat. That would be like Jay wearing a Gators hat.
Yeah, that was the bet. If I lost, I had to go out to dinner in a Gators hat like I was a fan, and everybody knows that's not true.
It's horrible. It's horrible. But you know what? I'm a man of my word, and I'm a stand-up guy. I'm gonna do it. I will be biting my tongue and grinding my teeth the whole time, and probably making like growling sounds at anybody. Be like, "Hey, go Yankees!" No, it's you might get knocked in the danglers if you come up to me and say "Go Yankees," even though I'm wearing a hat. I could turn it around backwards if I have to, Fred Durst style. But we're here to talk about SEC football. The when you talk college football, you talk about dynasties like Miami and USC, but there is a dynasty conference in college football, and that is 3 letters: SEC, the Southeastern Conference. So a little backstory on the SEC. It was started in 1932, so 92 years ago. It has currently 16 teams because they added 2. Because apparently the Big 12, are they in the Big 12? Big 12 can't hold on to their teams. So the most recent champion is Alabama. You know who the commissioner is?
Of baseball?
Of the SEC. Some guy named Greg Sankey. He's been the commissioner since 2015.
Never heard of her.
Huh. Neither have I. I bet he is an ugly woman. So SEC teams did not play a uniform number of conference games until 1974. Prior to that, the number of conference teams played ranged from 4 to 8, but most played a 6 or 7 game schedule. The league adopted a uniform 6-game schedule from 1974 to 87. So that means that they would play 6 conference games in a season. And then a 7th was added from 88 to 91. And so now it's an 8-game conference schedule for SEC teams.
Total of 12 games, so 4 non-conference games.
Yes.
Are we still doing that this year? Or are we doing all like 10 or 12?
So let me pull up the schedules and we'll see what they got, what we got. Because I know that Georgia is playing some non-conference teams.
Sorry, Long Beach State. No, I was right.
So Georgia they open up against Clemson. Then they play Tennessee Tech.
Oakland College, not Long Beach State. Oakland College beat Kentucky. I'm going to need to stop right here, pause. And the university, Oakland University out of Michigan, beats Kentucky by 4 in the first round. And they had nobody's dropping threes. And continue where we were. I'm going to have to cut that out and take it back because I said Long Beach State.
So they open against Clemson, ACC. Tennessee Tech, which is a no CC, lower conference. Their first SEC game is against Kentucky, week 3. Then they play Alabama. Then Auburn. Then Mississippi State. So that's, let's see, Kentucky, Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, Texas, Florida, Ole Miss, Tennessee. So that's 8. And then they play UMass and Georgia Tech to end the season. So yeah, they play 8. They still play 8.
Okay. It just seems like they could fill it up a little bit more since there's so many SEC teams now.
Yeah, it's weird because they're not playing Vanderbilt this year. They're not playing South Carolina this year.
Really?
They're not playing LSU. They're not playing Ole Miss. No, they are playing Ole Miss. So the SEC teams that they're playing are Tennessee, Ole Miss, Florida, Texas, Mississippi State, Auburn, Alabama, and Kentucky. So LSU's not on there. South Carolina's not on there. Missouri's not on there. Oklahoma's not on there. Who else am I missing? Why can't I think right now?
So we're not playing LSU or South Carolina or Mississippi State. No, we do play Mississippi
Missouri,
State.
Vanderbilt.
Yeah, Missouri, Vanderbilt, and Oklahoma. I think that's it.
Yeah.
So we play both Mississippis. We play Bama. We play Tennessee. We play Kentucky. So we just don't play LSU and South Carolina, Oklahoma, and Missouri. Sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be a tough schedule. I think the toughest game of the year for them is gonna be that Alabama game. But then again, it's like Alabama is not the team that they were last year. They lost a lot of players. I think Georgia is the most complete, ready team in college football this year. And I'm trying not to be a homer, but from everything I've heard from analysts and these guys that know what they're talking about more than I do, they say that Georgia is far and away the number one team.
Oh, absolutely.
And
I hear it from everybody.
They say it's not even close. Like the
people
returners,
are talking Carson Beck, number 1 overall draft pick, regardless of what kind of season he has. I mean, it's incredible the talent that we have. We've had some guys get in trouble, no surprise. For whatever reason, Athens is a little too much fun, and sometimes guys forget that we're playing for something bigger than ourselves here. This ain't about you. The NIL deal is about you. But between the hedges, between the Sundays and the Saturdays, you need to be focused on school. You need to be focused on practice, not chasing women and driving fast cars and spending all your money. You need to save for the future. I hate to sound like an old head here, but you need to do better, try harder,
right,
and grind while you can, while your body can take it, because you don't want to grind after 30. That hurts. It's silly. Stop it.
So you want to know how dominant the SEC is? In the 2024 draft, NFL draft. Well, hold on.
2022.
The 2022 NFL draft, there were 65 SEC players selected. 8 of those were from the University of Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. And what were we looking at with the national championship from, what was it, 2006 on?
2006 was Florida all the way up to Georgia in 21-22.
And
13 of them.
13 out of
17.
Yeah, out of 17 years.
4 non-SEC schools won a title in 17 years.
And that's crazy. I mean, the SEC.
And they were one of them was Florida State, one of them was Clemson, and one of them was Ohio State. So Clemson won twice, and that was the 4th team.
So that's another Southern school.
Yep.
That's crazy to think about. The fact that Clemson could easily have joined the SEC and it fit right in. But that just goes to show that the dominance of the SEC, and you can go back to the 80s, you can go back to the 90s, you can look at all that and see that there is a dominance within college football. And everybody says, oh, there's a bias against the SEC. Well, you know what? The SEC was still doing well even when USC was dominating, even when Miami and Florida State were dominating at the time, the Big East. And that was before they joined the SEC. It blows my mind that the talent that has come out of the SEC. So
Here's my thing about the SEC. Even when bowl games were important
Yes.
before the NIL deal and all the swag bags you got in the early 2000s, the late 90s, all of that money that was spent on the players, it was the opportunity for these sponsors to actually give kids something they earned, because you're not allowed to give kids free stuff and when they're in college. So my biggest takeaway is back in the day, air quotes, they would get to that bowl game, they'd get all that free stuff, a free vacation in college. The internet wasn't like it is today, where you're getting to see everybody have fun all the time and you're like, hey, I can do that. Back then you had to use your imagination and you knew you had rules and consequences. So you go out of town, you get to this bowl game, you've watched all this film, you've had easy practices, and you go out there. And a lot of players would opt out because they didn't want to get hurt before the draft, and the bowl game didn't mean anything. That did not used to happen near as much. Kids, college players wanted at least one more shot to have the best game of their career. That's the way it used to be. It's like, I want at least one more chance to play as hard as I can and leave it all on the field. So they did. And now it's like, if it's not a natty, they're just going home and hanging out with mom and waiting until their draft day.
Yeah.
After one season, and I hate that. It's like, you've got to put some time in. Just because you're getting paid now doesn't mean you get to put it on cruise control, and that's going to bring down the level of intensity at the pro level. All these guys getting paid so early, they're not continuing to grind, get better, and work harder. They've already made their payday.
How about these guys that are going to like 4 different schools in 4 years?
Ridiculous.
Every year, the NCAA needs to do something about how many times you can enter the portal. It needs to be like twice or once or twice.
Count your calories.
That's sugar-free.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But, I mean, once or twice, any more than that, it's like you don't need to enter anymore. And
Yeah.
I think the cutoff needs to be, you can do it once as an underclassman and once as a junior or senior, and then that's it.
I agree.
So that gives you a guarantee. If you transfer after your freshman year, you have to at least play, and then you can't transfer again until your junior or senior year, so you have to make a choice, right? So you can transfer your junior year or stick it out and either go to the NFL or transfer or play your junior year too and transfer your senior year.
I think that's a good idea, but I also truly believe that how do I say this? I truly believe that they should only get one opportunity to transfer because of real life. Nobody gets second chances that many times. Nobody ever walks into a real life situation going, it's okay if I screw this first one up. They're going to give me another round. I don't think we should set the precedence for people who are going to be having potential because of the money they're going to make to put themselves in positions to run the country.
I was coming up with an idea because I know that these people are going to boo-hoo it, these players. But it used to be back in the day, if you transferred, you had to sit out a year.
Yep.
And you lost your eligibility, too.
It's like JT Daniels was like, I'm going to see how many times I can transfer before I have to retire.
Yeah, he retired as a professional college football player.
Yeah, the first time ever I've heard of it.
But talking about, and the fact that the NIL is happening and the SEC still dominating, these players are still going to these teams, whether there's money involved or not. They're still going to go to these teams because they know that NFL teams are going to scout the SEC maybe a little bit harder than they would other conferences, other than a few exceptions, maybe like the Clemsons or the Ohio States out there. But
there's a reason the SEC has a catchphrase that's something along the lines of, it just means more.
It is truly the AAA minor league of the NFL.
Of course.
If you come out of the SEC, you're saying that you're probably one of the most NFL-ready prospects coming out. Listen to some of these win totals. Alabama has 965 wins, 337 losses, 43 ties. They have 30 SEC championships and 18 national championships claimed 18. Oklahoma, who just joined the SEC, has 944 wins. They have 7 claimed national titles. Texas has 948 wins. They have 4 claimed national championships.
Wow.
Tennessee has 865 wins. 13 SEC championships, and 6 national championships claimed. Georgia has 881 wins. They were second until stupid Oklahoma and Texas came in. And they have 14 SEC championships, which puts them second behind the juggernaut Alabama, and they have 4 claimed national championships.
I would like to state a fact that no matter how many SEC teams have won natties, we still have not caught up with the university or Yale University.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but, I mean, they dominate that Ivy League.
Yep.
I mean, you're
19 natties. I mean, Alabama has 17. They're right there.
You're the best nerds on the field.
Exactly, for a long time.
Yeah.
Just think about it. The University of Georgia wins a national championship in the January of 2021 with Stetson Bennett.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next year, you're like, they're not going to do it again, and they do it again. And then the NFL, mostly the Philadelphia Eagles, were like, hey, we'll take all of those guys.
Yeah, they're like,
and we'll take them in the first round.
They're like the Georgia North.
Yeah. 5 defensive players were selected in the first round in 2022, and in the whole draft, 15. Since the program set an NFL record for the most players taken in a single draft with a whopping 15 players. If that's not dominating, I don't know what is.
Georgia altogether is 48-14 against other conferences in the last, and this is in bowl games.
What was that stat again?
They are 48-14 against other conferences.
Oh, wow.
LSU is 31-10. Alabama is 30-15. Kentucky is 22-17. Texas A&M is 10-8. All these winning records.
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee is 22-18. Ole Miss is 16-14. Arkansas has the first losing record, but barely, 14-15. South Carolina 24-26. Florida 26-29. Missouri 8-9.
So we're either barely under 400 or dominant. I mean, barely under 500 or dominant.
Yeah. I mean, even Mississippi State's 12-15. Auburn's 20-23, and Vanderbilt is 14-20 against other conferences. But the crazy thing is, Vanderbilt has a winning record against the ACC. They're 12-11. It's crazy.
And just saying, the most Alabama had drafted in 1 year was 12. Georgia had 15. Just saying.
Just saying. Just putting that out there.
Just throwing that out there for all of my Alabama friends.
In the last 5 years, SEC teams have a 64-41 record over the opponents from the Big 12, the ACC, the Big 10, and the now reduced Pac-12.
And since 2009, the University of Alabama has produced 133 draft picks, the most by any college football program during that span.
Let's look at it in this way. Let's put it in perspective. If you look at the NFL, you have Tua, who's a starting quarterback. You have Jalen Hurts, starting quarterback. You have Matthew Stafford, starting quarterback. You have, who else? Well, you had Mac Jones, but he was garbage. But he was a starting quarterback. You've had so many running backs come out of the SEC, it's not even funny.
Oh, my God. Georgia has been running back university.
Chubb, Gurley, Michelle, Swift. I mean, all those guys.
Holyfield.
Yeah. Look at all the guys that came out of Alabama, too.
Yes, Eddie Lacy.
Najee Harris.
Derrick Henry, the stiff-arm king himself.
Bijan. Did he come out?
No, Bijan's out of Texas.
Who's the guy out of Alabama I'm thinking about? I don't know. But anyways, and then you have you've had some other guys come out.
Let's look at LSU. Joe Cool, Joe Burrow.
Yeah. Julio Jones was Alabama.
Yep. I mean, look at this. Alabama has a record for tied for the second most players drafted in NFL history and from college, and the number is 10. They've done it 7 times. So and they had 10 players drafted in 2017, 2019, 2021, and 2023. The SEC and lately Alabama mostly has been producing all of the NFL talent.
And everybody was, people out there were like, oh, well, it's just now. No, go back to the 60s and 70s. Joe Namath came out of the University of Alabama. Fran Tarkenton came out of the University of Georgia. It goes back. Peyton Manning went to the University of Tennessee. His brother Eli went to Ole Miss. And their nephew is in on the Texas squad now that Texas is part of the SEC. But the Manning brothers, they're another one you want to mention. And
but at two different schools, Ole Miss and Tennessee.
Yeah, Ole Miss and Tennessee. And their dad, Archie Manning, he went to Ole Miss. It's there. I mean, so much talent has come out of the SEC alone. And even Vanderbilt, the Cleveland Browns of the SEC, they've produced some players.
Here's an updated stat. The SEC, this is from the NFL directly, the SEC has the most NFL first-round draft picks with 209 and has led all conferences for 18 years in a row. In 2024, the SEC had 59 draft picks, with 13 of its 14 schools having at least one player selected. The Pac-12 had the second most. Just saying, for literally 18 years, almost 20 years, the professional league has gone, we're going to take all of these guys first, and then we'll fight over the other guys that, special talent. I feel like they don't do they do on most primetime games, but I feel like they don't do the introductions at the beginning of the game anymore because it's a whole team from the SEC. It's like, what are they promoting?
It used to be everybody from USC and the
Ohio State.
Now you got guys saying Georgia and Florida and LSU, and
you've got so many guys on the same team from Georgia. Some of them claim they're high school.
Yeah.
I have seen that on the Eagles.
Just look at it this year. Yeah, the first-round pick, we all know, came out of USC, but where'd the second pick come from? Daniels.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, LSU.
That's right.
The Heisman Trophy winner.
Mm-hmm.
Malik Neighbors came out of LSU.
And let's talk about where these kids are coming out of high school to come to SEC. Brock Bowers, Southern California. Noshawn Marino, New Jersey.
Yeah. Didn't Chubb come from New Jersey too?
Oh God, I feel like a jerk for not. No, Nick Chubb's from Chubbville, Georgia.
Okay.
Nick, there is a town in Georgia called Chubbville, and his family. It's called Cedartown, Georgia, but there's a sign as you're coming in that says "Welcome to Chubbville." So
Sony Michel was from Hollywood, Florida. So
Hollywood, Florida.
We cut into their territory there.
Yeah, but Noshawn Marino, that's a New Jersey guy. Like, that's coast to coast.
Yeah.
We've got some hometown guys over the years, like Tavares King, Gunnar Stockton. We've pulled some dudes straight out of Georgia. We even had the number one guy out of the high school in Gainesville.
DeAndre Swift is from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
See, there's another one.
So he went home to play with his hometown Eagles.
Exactly. He's back home. But we had Justin Fields in Athens, and he's from Georgia. But he wanted to play now. We weren't ready for him, and I don't think that he needed more time and dedication. We had our starter.
Yeah.
He wasn't ready. He wasn't ready to sit. He wanted to play. So we lost him, and, it is what it is. But
Matthew Stafford is from Tampa, but he went to high school in Texas.
See, that's a Texas high school quarterback. We have recruited, the UGA has recruited guys from all over the country, coast to coast, north to south. It's pretty incredible, the reach we have. I can remember growing up, and everybody was from somewhere down around here at the beginning of the game. You got David Pollock, David Green. I feel like they're from the South. I could be wrong. We're going to check out David Pollock. Shout out to defensive end GOAT out of UGA. He's out of Shiloh High School from Georgia.
David Green's from Snellville.
Georgia. Yeah, those early 2000s dogs, those were homers. They were the best players in the state, and they put Georgia on the map. That 02-03 team with the Sugar Bowl, that was the first time I can remember jumping up and down from my living room, excited.
You know why Alabama got really good? They cut into Georgia. They recruited into Georgia, and Mark Richt dropped the ball and let Alabama come in there and start taking players. And Urban Meyer did the same thing with Florida. They were taking these players from Georgia. Kirby Smart, who was the top recruiter for Nick Saban, came over, and you know what? He took Georgia back.
Exactly. That was one of our perks when he left Alabama. He really kept the same recruiting trail, and it has paid off tenfold. So today, guys, we're just gonna kind of bring you back around. Just remind you, we're talking about the dominance of the SEC, the Southeastern Conference in college football, and what they've been able to do over the last 2 decades. 18 years straight, 13 of those 18 champions came out of the SEC, and of the 5, 2 of them are the same team, Florida State and Clemson. So Florida State wins in 2005, and then Clemson and Alabama went back and forth between 2016 and 2018. Other than that, it has been all SEC all the time. They are the B League to the NFL, and they have been basically a recruiting ground for the NFL. They've had the most draft picks out of any conference in college football over the last 18 years. The numbers don't lie. The fan bases don't lie. The SEC, when teams from anywhere else come down here to play, they see what it's like. I would love to see a Michigan, an Ohio State, a Pitt, a USC come play in modern SEC country.
Props to Notre Dame because they did it.
Yep. And they're willing to step out of their comfort zone and come down here and get smacked because that is what happened. But it was, it rekindled an old friendly rivalry. That's something that I'd like to speak to on bad fans real quick. There's some real bad fans out there that aren't fans. They're just haters that wear somebody's jersey. So I know some LSU fans, and I know some Florida fans that don't even root for their own team. They just talk trash about the other teams. That's their thing. They just wear a yellow and purple shirt, but they never say go Tigers. They just say, Georgia's trash because of this reason, and they're haters. So I digress. I don't remember where I was going with that.
I've seen a video where these Alabama fans are throwing away their Alabama stuff and starting to wear Georgia stuff.
Good for us.
It's like you're jumping on the bandwagon. I can't. Everybody knows how I feel about bandwagon fans. Can't stand
them.
But so let's talk some rivalry games, and I think that SEC has some of the best rivalry games in all of football. You have a rivalry game, Alabama and Florida.
Oh, never mind.
Alabama and Florida. Do you know that the first time they played each other was in 1916?
Really?
Alabama, Georgia. The first time they played each other was in 1895. They've played 73 games. We have Alabama and Ole Miss. They first played in 1894. So, I mean, the SEC goes back. We're talking turn of the century. I mean, 1800s. Arkansas and LSU play for the Golden Boot.
The Golden Boot.
Arkansas and Ole Miss. So now Arkansas and Texas, that rivalry becomes an SEC rivalry now. Auburn, Florida. Auburn, Georgia.
Auburn, Georgia.
Auburn, was it that
Deep South's oldest rivalry?
Yep. You have
a Southern tradition.
You have battle for Highway 82. That is Alabama and Mississippi State. You have the battle for the rag, the Tiger Rag. That's LSU and Tulane. I know that's not SEC, but I just thought that was funny, a funny name. Let's fight for a rag. Battle line rivalry, Arkansas and Missouri. Let's see. We have some of the names of these college rivalries are some of the stuff. They're a keg of nails. Cincinnati and Louisville face each other for a keg of nails. So the clean old-fashioned hate for the Governor's Cup, Georgia and Georgia Tech. You got to remember, Georgia Tech used to be in the SEC for a while. We also have Georgia and Tennessee. You have, of course, Georgia, Florida, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party.
You know, they tried to get away from that name to kind of, this is not what it's about. It's a family setting. Let me tell you something. I have been around some of the most degenerate people in America in my rock and roll experience. I have never heard some of the most terrible obscenities as I have at a Georgia-Florida weekend. So don't come out here trying to tell me or my friends that they should go to the Georgia-Florida game with their children, because only grown people should hear things like that because they know to ignore it. I'm telling you right now, that's a vulgar game. They need to keep the name because that's exactly what it is. It's the largest outdoor cocktail party in the world. It needs to stay that way. That's my 2 cents. And if y'all remember from episode 5, Corey and I talked about sobriety for a while, and we both cling to our sobriety. Corey's over a decade. I'm coming up on it. But to each their own. If you like to party, party. But don't start trying to give this false narrative that the Florida-Georgia game is some kind of setting where kids can be there, because it never has been, and it probably never will be.
I don't even think it's safe for kids in the living room.
I don't either.
Because I've heard some of these Florida and Georgia fans, like, have you seen those license plates where it says House Divided? And sometimes it'll be like Georgia or Georgia Tech. Some of them are Georgia and Florida. I'm like, how are you married to each other? Like, why? Why'd you do that? You must really love her or really love him, because, it's just.
Can't do it. Those like, House Divided, yeah, I can't do that.
Like, yeah, but, I think a lot of the bias against SEC is because when something is so dominant and so good, everybody wants to hate it.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the SEC fans, with a few exceptions in college football, are ridiculous. They are crazy. They're psychotic.
I never remember a time where I was like, yeah, Alabama, I want you to win this for the SEC. I think they're the only team where I just can't get behind them.
Yeah.
And we talked about this in another episode when Alabama absolutely slapped Notre Dame in the Natty. I bought a Notre Dame hat. That's Alabama and Florida are the two teams that I just can't get behind. And that's just some good old-fashioned hate. We talked about the Cam Newton season. It was fun to get behind him. It was fun to watch that team. We had a blast watching that team.
And knowing that
years.
Cam Newton transferred out of Florida,
right?
Because he was sitting behind Tim Tebow and went to Auburn. And yeah, it was 1 year, but he took that Auburn team to a national championship.
And it was made for TV.
Yeah,
that was a great natty.
It was.
And I would have not enjoyed watching Cam play if he'd have stayed at Florida. I just don't feel like watching him play when he was at Florida as a backup, the situations they put him in, they were like, I felt like they were going to ruin him before he ever got going. He was never even going to throw a pass. He was going to be a big, clunky RPO guy, and they were going to abuse him, and Urban Meyer was going to drive him into the ground. And I'm glad for his career and as a fan that he got to go to Auburn and win a natty.
Oh, yeah. And look at that Super Bowl a few years ago where you had the Bengals and the Rams. They actually brought up on TV that you had two SEC quarterbacks facing off against each other when you had Joe Burrow and Matthew Stafford. And you know what? That was another exciting team to watch, was that Joe Burrow LSU-led team. That was a team that I don't necessarily think I was getting behind them, but they were a fun team to watch. I enjoyed watching Joe Burrow, and you could tell by looking at him, this was an NFL-ready guy, and he transferred into the SEC. So kudos to him for leaving what other school was he at? Ohio State or somewhere like that. And he transferred in. Oh, yeah, that's right. He is from Ohio, I believe. He transferred into LSU. He transferred into the SEC. That's crazy to think about, but we talk about the SEC in the dominance, and rightfully so. A lot of the best football talent, like when you look at stuff like Friday Night Lights, the high school football is for real in the South. From Texas all the way over to the East Coast to Georgia and Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky, all these southern states, it's huge. In Florida, high school football is the real thing. And a lot of the talent you'll see even in these other schools, Ohio State, a lot of them are from Georgia, Alabama, Florida, places like that. And
they got to go play somewhere.
Yeah, and you're taking like these guys transferring out of Georgia that were sitting on the bench weren't good enough to play for Georgia, but they go to another school and they play really, really well. So even like the worst players that transfer out of an SEC school are still going to make the NFL because they go to another school and they make a name for themselves.
Exactly. I want to take you back real quick. I love throwbacks to SEC rivalries, and we were talking about some good old-fashioned hate, the South's oldest rivalry, rather. I apologize. The South's oldest rivalry. I want to take you back to 1986. Things were not going good for the Georgia Bulldogs, and they had to go to Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn, Alabama. The Georgia had lost 3 in a row to their hated SEC rivals going back to 1983 when the Tigers had bested them for what would have been Georgia's 4th consecutive SEC title. Instead, Auburn won it that year and was in a position on this day again. So back in 1986, the starting quarterback was James Jackson, and he was the star.
Who?
Exactly. His grandmama, who raised him, had passed away, so Vince Dooley let him stay and go be with his family. So it wasn't looking good, but a lot of fans showed up that day. Somehow the Georgia Bulldogs, with the clock winding down, were leading 20-16, and Auburn was putting together their final drive. Senior linebacker Steve Boswell sealed it with a late interception to win the game. As the clock dwindled down to zeros, pandemonium ensued to what would forever be known as the game between the hoses, because fans started jumping onto the field and taking patches of Auburn grass with them as souvenirs because it'd been a while since they had won in Jordan-Hare Stadium. The groundskeepers, to try to defend their grass, cut the sprinkler systems on and started running the hoses and everything and spraying the fans. But to no avail. The wet fans just had more fun sliding and messing up the field. So if the rivalry wasn't already called the South's oldest rivalry, it was most certainly turned up at this point. It was a big upset that year, and it made it bigger than just players versus players. You had fans versus groundkeepers at this point. So just a little throwback there from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. We appreciate them for doing what they have for sports over the last 100 years. The SEC has been reported on by the AJC for quite some time. So when you're a kid, you grow up with rabbit ear antenna TV. Sometimes the AJC is the only way that you hear that Florida got upset or Georgia walked all over somebody in another sport other than football. Which brings me to my next thing. I've wanted to, since you and I have started, talk about my influence and my hero on the mic. Then, they say things like never meet your heroes because they're going to let you down.
Yeah.
I am glad, because of peer review, that I was never able to meet Larry Munson. I won't speak ill of the dead. Other people have. But what I will say is I'm glad I didn't get to meet him because he would have let me down. However, his influence through the microphone on the radio waves is what he was my Michael Jordan. Larry Munson calling Georgia Bulldog games. My family would mute the television and turn the radio up. And even if the timing was off, it didn't matter because Larry was on the radio. And there's never been another man's voice that sounded anything like Larry. I've never met anybody that I looked at him and was like, man, you sound like Larry Munson. And, we both know, and everybody around me knows, I've met a lot of people. I've heard a lot of voices, seen a lot of faces. And I just want to give a shout out to Larry Munson. That's kind of my hero on the microphone. It's my influence. And I absolutely can't round that off without saying a shout out to David Foster at WCON and Habersham Broadcasting Company. David Foster and Habersham Broadcasting Company for giving Corey and I this opportunity to record here, and growing up listening to David call Habersham Central Raider games on Friday nights. Coming up this season, Corey and I are going to be working with 107.7 The Breeze, a Habersham Broadcasting Company affiliate, calling high school baseball games. So you guys tune in the spring on 107.7 on local radio, and just, again, wanted to shout out some people we looked up to growing up and give a thank you to the people giving us this opportunity.
I definitely want to thank David Foster and WCON here in Cornelia, Georgia, for giving us this opportunity, allowing us to invade your ear holes with our sports nonsense and how much we care and how much we love all you guys and we appreciate it. But this is how Jay and I work. Well, before he even mentioned Larry Munson, I had brought up another key rivalry game and probably his most famous call, Run, Lindsey, Run. This was a Georgia-Florida game. It happened probably over 40 years ago. It was an iconic game. So just to get into the game a little bit, it was a 3rd and 11, Georgia's 7-yard line with the Gators up by 1. The story played sent the Bulldogs to a season-saving 26-21 victory. I still believe that it is the greatest play in Georgia football history, said one of the greatest coaches of all time, Vince Dooley. The play was a left 76, and Lindsey Scott ran a crossing route on what Dooley called a basic pass play that Buck Bellew, the quarterback for the Georgia Bulldogs, our go-to 3rd and long play is what they called it. So what ended up happening on this play was the Gators were up, and it was, if you listen to this call, like Larry Munson is so like disheveled and it's like, oh man, we're not going to win this game. We're going to lose. You can just tell in his voice. So what ended up happening was this was a play where you had Herschel Walker in the backfield. You were going to run a play action. So Buck Bellew, fakes the ball to Herschel Walker, and the Gator inside linebacker had to be alert for Bellew tucking and running the ball because Buck Bellew could take off and run. But what happened was Buck Bellew stepped up. He pointed at Scott to signal for him to stop because the linebacker was between Bellew and Scott. And he fired the ball over the middle. Scott leaped up and caught it about the 25-yard line with two Florida players, a couple yards behind him and two more close by. But one slipped and fell to help create a running lane, and Scott turned on the Jets, and he was gone. He scored for 1 minute and 3 seconds. And the iconic call, here it is. It's got to throw on the run. Complete to the 25, to the 30. Lindsey Scott, 35-40. Lindsey Scott, 45-50, 45-40. Run, Lindsey. 25, 20, 15, 10, 5. Lindsey Scott, Lindsey Scott, Lindsey Scott.
Back 3rd down on the 8. In trouble. Got a block behind him. Gonna throw and a run. Complete to the 25, to the 30. Lindsey Scott, 35-40. Lindsey Scott, 45-50, 45-40. Run, Lindsey. 25, 20, 50, 10, 5. Lindsey Scott, Lindsey Scott, Lindsey Scott.
So I didn't do that justice, but you can't outgoat the GOAT.
You can't outgoat the GOAT.
But that
gave me cold chills.
That just goes to show you a rivalry in the SEC, and that was one of the greatest games in the Florida-Georgia rivalry. Like, you can also think back to the Auburn game recently where it was tipped, and the Auburn guy, the Georgia defender leaped up, tipped the ball away, and then it fell right into the Auburn receiver's hand, and he was gone.
He just turned around and took off.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's been so many close games between Auburn and Georgia, so many close games between Florida and Georgia, so many close games between Alabama and Georgia. It is.
They play the entire game here in the South. You know, it's not. They're not first quarter teams. They're not third quarter teams until they're playing each other.
Well, go back to the Alabama-Auburn game where they kicked that long field goal and it's missed, and Chris Davis catches it and runs it 109 all the way back for a touchdown, and the Alabama players are like, which way did he go? Which way did he go? Is that? It's like in the longest yard. Is that play legal? Yes, it is. Is that a touchdown?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Oh, come on, you guys suck. What's going on? That's just what it reminds me of, and it's like you think you think of all these moments, like how many great SEC games have there been? Remember that high-scoring game with Missouri and Auburn?
Oh, yes.
That game was ridiculous. You want to talk about a fun game to watch? Go back and watch the SEC championship from like 2017?
Yeah,
18?
Here's Chris Davis's field goal kick return.
Hold it. Now they've officially made it 57 yards.
Remember, a block kick can go the other way, too. You got to be careful and get it up.
On the way. No, returned by Chris Davis. Davis goes left. Davis gets a block. Davis has another block. Chris Davis. No flags. Touchdown. Auburn. An answered prayer.
The players just can't believe it.
It's like Nick Saban's the only guy that realized what was going on. Like, when he runs, you just see a bunch of Auburn players running with him. It's like the Alabama guys thought maybe a whistle blew or something.
Yeah.
They didn't know what was going on.
You can tell just watching the video as Nick walks on the field, the headset's already off. He's got that swag to him. He's like, saw it
Yeah.
coming. Yeah, he was probably on the headset with the special teams coordinator going, you do realize they're going to have a man with his heels on the back of the end zone. This is a long field goal. Are we prepared for a return?
Yeah.
Because Nick Saban's the king of situational football. That's why he won so many national championships. You don't just decide on a whim to put your freshman backup quarterback at halftime.
I mean, it's
The list of things that Nick Saban has done that most people would say is bold is calculated for him. He thought about it before the game and was like, we need to be ready for this. So this A.J. McCarron loss right here is one of Nick Saban's, I guarantee you, spiciest defeats. He really hated this one.
he was outsmarted on it.
Yep.
And he is the Bill Belichick of college football.
Oh, yeah.
And just the decisions that he makes, you can tell.
But this is the 2013 Iron Bowl.
Yep.
There's a lot of talent on the field.
This is the in-state Alabama rivalry.
Yep.
And
number 1 versus number 4 right here.
yeah, that's what launched Auburn into the stratosphere and knocked Alabama out of the. I think it knocked Alabama out of the national championship that year.
Yes, pretty sure you're right.
I don't know if it knocked Auburn into a natty, but I know it knocked Alabama out of a natty for sure. You know what else is unfair that I just thought of?
What's that?
With Texas and Oklahoma coming over, the SEC inherited another rivalry game, the Red River Shootout.
Yep.
With Texas and Oklahoma. That is now an SEC rivalry game starting this year.
Yeah, 2013 was the Jameis Winston SEC, national championship, but Auburn was up there. They were ranked 4th. That was the big Chris Davis return, but that was not. That's a few years after Cam's.
That was Oregon, right?
Yeah, no, 2013 Florida State versus Oregon.
Is that what it was?
I think so.
I think it was. I think it was Florida State, Oregon.
Yeah, Jameis Winston versus not Marcus Mariota. Oh, we just covered this one.
What was that guy's name? We just covered this not too long ago. Mariota was drafted in what, like 11 or 12?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh no, that ain't right. Yeah, Auburn did make it to the national championship in 2013. They just lost to Jameis Winston.
Okay.
So that Iron Bowl right there knocked
that
Alabama out of the SEC championship contention
And put Auburn in.
And they made it, but they lost to Jameis Winston. That was post Cam Newton.
Was that 2 undefeated teams playing each other, Auburn and Alabama?
I think Auburn lost to they lost to somebody else, maybe us that year.
Yeah.
Let's look at Auburn's 2013 season, shall we?
That's crazy to think about that. Now the Red River Shootout comes to the SEC.
Yeah, the Red River rivalry. That's a mouthful. They don't have lisps out there, I guess. The Red River rivalry.
Red River rivalry. Yeah, it's crazy. But I mean, a lot of people are going to say that's not fair now. But you know what? It doesn't.
Yeah, Auburn that year only lost 2 games. They lost at LSU, and then they lost the Natty. That was it. They absolutely slaughtered Missouri in the SEC championship, 59-42. That was not a very high-scoring defensive game. I mean, that was not a very big defensive game.
Yeah.
They beat Georgia that year by 5. So they slapped Tennessee by 30. They slapped Arkansas by 20. That was a really good Auburn team.
Yeah, I mean, it really was. It's a overlooked, underrated Auburn team because
Marshall was the quarterback. Nick Marshall.
Nick Marshall. Yep. It's crazy because that was a overlooked.
And Trey Mason was the running back. You remember that name?
Yep.
Trey Mason was a good college running back. And then Coates, Sammy Coates plays for Houston. Played for Houston. He was on that Auburn team too.
Wow. It's. I mean, like I said, they're overlooked because of the dominance of Alabama. You're wedged in between, coming off of that mid-2000s Gators team, which you want to talk about a stacked team. Those
Gators teams.
07, 08 Gators teams with Tim Tebow, Brandon Spikes, Brandon Merriweather.
That's it's a movie waiting to be made because half of them are convicts.
Aaron Hernandez, a murderer.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not even going to say the rest in peace part for that fella.
No,
I will say that the comedians on Tom Brady's roast did a great job. That was some good stuff. Like it's hard to tell jokes about somebody who was so sinister and did such terrible things. But Kill Tony did a wonderful job.
Yeah. I mean,
shout out to Kill Tony.
So the inaugural SEC championship was played in 1992, and it was between Alabama and Florida. Before that, they didn't have a championship game.
It was just the best record was the champ.
Alabama beat Florida 28-21. It was played in Birmingham, Alabama at Legion Field.
Which was a nice stadium at the time.
The coach of Alabama was Gene Stallings. The coach of Florida was Steve Spurrier.
Oh, yeah. No, that's no Joe Schmo right there.
Yep.
Big
and so
name.
it was actually – so listen to this. So Florida goes up early, 7-0 in the first. Eric Rett, 5-yard touchdown reception from quarterback Shane Matthews, who went to go play for the Bears in the NFL. And then Alabama – scores with a Derek Lasik 5-yard touchdown run. Alabama takes a 14-7 lead with Curtis Brown 30-yard touchdown reception from quarterback Jay Barker. Don't know. Then they take a 21-7 lead, Alabama, with a Derek Lasik 15-yard touchdown run. And then Florida makes it 21-14 when Willie Jackson scores from 4 yards out on a 4-yard pass from Shane Matthews. Then Florida ties it up 21-21 when Eric Rett runs it from 1 yard out. Then, with 3 minutes left in the game, it was a 27-yard interception return by Antonio Langham that won the game for Alabama 28-21. So even the first SEC championship game sounded like it was a good one.
You know, I'm just looking through the current members of the SEC and the longest-standing members of the SEC. Fun facts here, since 1932, the SEC has had and still in existence these teams. So almost 100 years. Let's see, that's 92 years. 90 years. 92 years. It's 2024, my man. 92 years these teams have been in the SEC. Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, LSU, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt. 3 additional teams were members at the beginning.
Georgia Tech, I know, was one of them.
Georgia Tech, and they were there from 32 to 64. And then the University of Sewanee, which is in Tennessee, and Tulane.
Okay, yeah.
Which is in Louisiana.
Yep.
So it wasn't all 3 of the teams that left were in the South. So since 1932, we have had teams join like Arkansas in 1991. Missouri joined us in 2012. Oklahoma and Texas 2024. South Carolina joined in 91. So they joined in 91, and then next year we started SEC championship games.
That was, but those teams are still all in the South, though. That's
Yep.
I
And
mean,
Texas A&M joined us in 2012, and that's what makes up the SEC now.
You know what? I'm looking at these SEC championship games. The first 3 were played between Alabama and Florida. In 1994, it was a 24-23 game. That's crazy.
Wow.
And then Florida played again in 95, where they won 34-3 over Arkansas. The MVP was Danny Werfel, and that was played in the Georgia Dome. Then Florida and Alabama again in 96. Tennessee and Auburn 30-29 in 1997. You know who the MVP was in that game?
Nope.
Peyton Manning.
Get out of here.
And then in 98, it was Tennessee over Mississippi State. So
En route to a national championship there without Peyton Manning.
Yep. Alabama and Florida again in 99. It's crazy. They dominated the SEC. And Florida won again in 2000. Wow. LSU won in 2001 over Tennessee 31-20. Some of these games are either blowouts or very, very close. There's no in between. Like this one, 2002, Georgia beat Arkansas 30-3.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
They didn't turn on the jukebox on that game.
Nope. It's crazy how these are either blowouts or very close games. There's no in between. But I mean,
shout out to Anthony Edwards real quick. Anthony Edwards is a Georgia boy, went to the University of Georgia, and just won his first gold medal with the United States men's basketball team in the Olympics. The SEC does not dominate in basketball.
No.
We are not really known for that. So for somebody like Anthony Edwards, we're here on episode 8, and I'm going to go ahead and say it is the first thing. He is the first athlete since Michael Jordan I have seen that looks anything like the level that Michael Jordan played at. I don't compare Michael and Kobe because I feel like one is 1 and one is 2.0. Like they're not excuse me, they are not I don't argue with those two. It goes Jordan, Kobe, and then everybody else. So Anthony Edwards, I'm going to say it now, mark my words, by the end of his career will be in that conversation, is Anthony Edwards 3.0, because anybody can argue till they're blue in the face and get emotional about LeBron James if they want to. They can start talking about his stats. It took 20 years before they could talk about his stats, but they can talk about them now.
Yeah.
Jordan hit stats in his prime. He won championships in his prime. He changed the game in his prime, not just on the court, but on the world stage. He brought a level of respect to the game. The basketball was basic. The NBA was nothing more than a glorified WCW with a ball, okay?
Yeah.
On the hardwood. That's what it was. And they were like, we're going to have to change basketball. And Jordan was like, okay, watch this.
Yep.
I'll show you basketball. I'll
Yep.
show you basketball. They're tackling. I'm so good at basketball, they're tackling me in the air. So what does he do in the offseason? He puts on 20 pounds of muscle, comes out the next year. And fortunately for him, the NBA changed the rules and added the technical foul and the flagrants, stuff like that. And some old school dogs will tell you, hey, they made the game softer. I don't think they did. I think they made basketball better. Jordan wore it out, son. It was great. And then when he left, we were on a hangover for a little bit. Kobe filled the gap. There was too much drama between Kobe and Shaq for me to enjoy basketball. They couldn't just play. Like, I didn't pick up. Maybe it was I was too young, but I didn't pick up on the Scottie Pippen MJ drama while they were playing.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I picked up on it afterwards, but I didn't pick up on it while they were playing like Kobe and Shaq. But I digress. Back to Anthony Edwards. I think real time we need to appreciate that man. And if he can go on healthy and not get injured, He is about to put together the best run in the NBA since Kobe did. Because I'm not a LeBron James believer. He made basketball watered down. He should have got a life coach. He should have gotten some counseling going from teenager to superstardom. I don't feel like his psyche handled it well. He's a goofy grown man.
Yeah,
I'm not a big fan. He's not setting a good example. I mean, it is what it is. If I had that stage, I have the family members around me that would be like, Jay, you're a pompous, condescending jerk. Most people think you're a joke. You need to get your life together.
Yep.
And I'd be like, thanks, Mom.
Yep.
Nobody can talk to LeBron like that, and he continues to just do silly stuff like repeating ads like The Rock does. It's some of these celebrities are just they forget the internet is permanent. Like this podcast, it's going to go out on the internet, and everything we've ever said can be referenced again, and I'm cool with that. And I want it to be known that I'm saying Anthony Edwards is the face of the NBA. He's the future of the NBA, and in 3 years, people are going to forget about LeBron James.
You've heard it here first. Going back to SEC, let's talk some other sports. College World Series, college baseball. You know what team has the most College World Series wins?
Wins, Texas A&M.
LSU.
LSU.
SEC team. They have 7 College World Series championships.
And the reigning College World Series champion, the University of Tennessee Volunteers.
Yeah. Okay, so LSU has 7. Florida has 1. Mississippi State has 1. Oklahoma, who's now in the SEC, they have 2, but that doesn't count. Tennessee has 1.
They just won it.
Georgia has 1. Vanderbilt has 2. And Ole Miss has 1. Missouri has 1. And
Another
That's it.
player coming out of left field for the Georgia Bulldogs, like Anthony Edwards on the basketball court, is going to be Charlie Condon on the baseball diamond.
Yep.
That dude is a maniac, and he got drafted into the pros this year.
First round
pick.
Pick.
That's multiple years right here that Georgia sports are seeing some first rounders out of something other than football. That's a big deal. We love to hear that. We're big sports fans here at It's Just the Show.
And we had to not a whole lot of people know this, but just like with any type of show or podcast or anything like that, you have to make adjustments on the fly. So we recorded some of our shows on the fly the last couple weeks, due to unforeseen circumstances. We will bring you a college football show. We can't call it a preview show anymore, but we will bring you a show, an updated show. We are working on some more guests. Do you want to tell them who or?
Oh no, I want to keep it a secret. I can't wait.
We're working on some big things. We're talking about an NFLer, a guy that played in the NFL. We'll leave it at that. Well, a couple guys that play in the NFL.
That's right.
And so we'll leave it at that. We're working on some things, but we're trying to give you the best content that we can. We're burning the candle at both ends. It's a 2-man operation. We're trying to get these shows edited and out there as fast as we possibly can. So bear with us. We know that we got some loyal listeners. Shout out to James Grizzle, who has listened to every show. And the thing about it is he wasn't a big sports fan. He loves that wrestling, but he's not that big of a sports fan, and we have kind of turned him into one.
And we fully intend on having James on the show down the road when we get some help in the studio. Shout out to producer Latonio. He's going to give us a hand moving forward with our video editing. Corey and I like to sit in here with no cameras when it's just me and him, but you can be guaranteed, rest assured, anytime we have someone to interview, we're going to be live on social media somehow, some way, and that's going to be uploaded onto YouTube. We'll have different camera angles and highlights from games we discuss.
I never understood that. We got that feedback. Why do people want to see us?
I can't figure it out. Leave in the comments why it is so bad you want to watch us. I know that it's kind of different just listening to people talk with no picture, but that's how podcasting got on the map to begin with, and we're going to have some traditional podcast here on It's Just the Show.
Yep. And, I think that we wrap this up with saying that, the reason why the SEC is the greatest conference in sport, in college sports, but we'll say college football because that's mainly what we focused on. It's because of the recruiting. It's because of the process. It's because of the talent field in the South coming out of high school football. And it's because they have coaches that can resonate with these young kids who a lot of these kids are coming out of, not the best environments, and they're looking at them as father figures.
Yep.
And the reason why the SEC dominates is because they have the track record.
Yep, and they create family environments. It's not a, they come in, these guys are brothers freshman year, and they are till graduation.
You go to the SEC, you're likely to get drafted in the NFL in a high draft pick.
Yep.
So
you're going to have TV exposure in
Yes.
the NFL. In the SEC. You're going to have TV exposure.
You're either going to be a doofus for dropping a ball or you're going to be a hero for making a great play. But I think to wrap this up, SEC, greatest conference, college football, you can't even challenge me on that.
Yep. Can't unless you're in your 60s and you saw something that we can't get on the internet.
Back in my day, Yale was the best team to ever play the footballs.
Oh, my goodness. Guys, thank you for sticking with us. We're over the hour mark here. We appreciate you. Don't forget to share this with somebody. If you've made it this far and you listen to our show, you know anybody that's ever brought up a sports topic one time in your relationship with them, please send them this. That's the only way we'll ever get out there, and we're here for you guys. Like Corey said, leave us questions in the comments. Give us some content. We want to cater it around you guys. James, don't worry. We got a pro wrestling episode coming soon. Chris Blaylock, don't you worry. We're going to get into NASCAR. But one thing at a time. It's not always about winning or losing, but it is always about how you podcast it.